boys, girls, all my tromboholics out there, and all of Rob's Light and Nights out there. Rob's not here. It's just Joe for this. It's Arrow. This week's episode of Arrow, titled 1159. This week's Arrow review. And actually, probably the first Arrow review on this channel. I don't know. Is it the first one? I think so. This was a bigger episode. That's why I definitely felt that it needed to be addressed, right? So, do we get into it? I mean, I guess I'll talk about it at the end. And if you saw the episode, you know what I'm talking about. Wow. Solid episode. Very solid episode. They kind of foreshadowed the ending the whole episode. If you saw, there was kind of a, not leak, but I guess something that the creator said that this was the episode where we find out the season-long question of who's in the grave. And we did. We did. And with that character, it was kind of mentioned the whole season. It was kind of a chapter was closed. All of a sudden, a lot of things in this episode felt so rushed. And that's really my main negative with this episode is that felt very rushed. It kind of came out of nowhere. And they kind of acted like it's been building, but it really hasn't. And if anything, maybe they mentioned it once before. I don't remember. But this was a very sudden thing where it's like, okay, I'm going to stop doing this. And I don't want to get too specific because I don't want to spoil for anyone who hasn't seen the episode yet. But very, very sudden. So you kind of put two and two together that, okay, it sounds like this character's story is wrapping up. The other thing I dislike, and this one I don't have to keep confidential, is Andy and John. And John just all of a sudden wholeheartedly 100% behind Andy through everything. But a few weeks ago, he hated him and didn't trust a word he said. But now John went against Oliver because he trusts Andy more. I mean, it was very, very rushed. I mean, with a show that has seasons that last like 400 episodes each, you definitely could have extended this much longer when it comes to these two. If you had some more episodes. I mean, we haven't seen Andy in a while. But when it comes to, first of all, the length of time since Andy's kind of come back with John, it hasn't even been that long. And if we talk about episodes that Andy's been in, it's been what, maybe two? Two times that he's been in where he's been with them now. So that felt very, very contrived, very rushed. And it felt like they just wanted to kind of make a big stand in this episode, and they didn't care what they had. They were just going to take these stands already, even if they weren't going to keep building up some plot points, which, like these two plot points, should have probably been built up more. That is, the character who passed, their decision to stop what they were doing and go full force into something else. I feel like that kind of should have been more on the forefront for the past few episodes. And with Diggle's brother, all of us saw that coming from a mile away. Not only because of the teaser last week, but even before that, I think it was pretty obvious that this man really could not be trusted. Just because of how they depicted him. But I don't know. Those felt very contrived. Other than those 2 points, very, very solid episode. Malcolm is still a force to be reckoned with. Thea is actually holding her own a little bit when she shot the arrow at Dark. That was pretty cool. And really, okay, I want to get into this. Last thing, flashback. The flashback for this season, I think they're usually kind of pointless. And even though it'll parallel a theme of what's going on in the current story, like the flashbacks have throughout the series, I still don't think it warrants having it on the show, period. And although this week wasn't necessarily an exception to these specific flashbacks, I thought it added more than the other flashbacks have, just because of the fact that it really showed the, first of all, I mean, obviously the man that Oliver is at that point, a very kind of dark man who's changed. He's kind of twisted in comparison to what he used to be, and that gets addressed and everything. But really, and this is going to lead into a spoiler. So if you have not seen the episode, go watch it. Come back, finish the review. When he shows the picture of Laurel, it really showed that was effective being there, because even though we know how he felt about Laurel, it was still nice to see that, because remember, he brought Sarah onto the ship, and even though he was in love with Laurel, it was still nice to see him reflect on Laurel as opposed to anyone else. When he's in the thick of it, in that island at that moment, he thinks of Laurel. And that was... It showed that he always still had that one piece of him, even though he obviously misses Thea at that point and everything, and he still has... maybe... Oh, I said we're in spoilers. Okay. Laurel dies. We're in spoilers. Okay, so... Even though he still has Thea, it's different with Laurel. He was in love with her at one point. This was a very different type of relationship. And when he was on the island, he kind of, I think we've seen in the past, he kind of felt like wrong, right? Obviously. And that he betrayed her a little bit because he brought Sarah on. So he still always kind of had that piece of him in Laurel, though. And he, like he said in this episode, he's still the man from the island. So watching him look at that picture while on the island showed that he still had that piece of him with Laurel. And now, comes full circle, that piece of him has died. So one of the things that really kept him going on the island is now gone. So that was why the flashbacks were pretty... They were pretty effective. They definitely added to this week's episode. Whereas the flashbacks for this season, I don't think are interesting or good at all. This one actually provided a little something. So, and last thing I want to talk about, the final scene, Quentin, that was really what hit home. Quentin, you really have to feel for this character, what he's been through throughout these seasons. It gets harder and harder for him, and this was a huge blow. This was a huge blow to a character who's already taken so many blows. So I'm eager to watch, just to kind of cheer for Quentin a little bit, see him get better. He still has Felicity's mother, I believe. So thankfully he still has something. But this was not a good episode for the Lance family. But that's it for this week's episode of Arrow. Let me know what you guys thought of this week's review, and do you want to see some more Arrow on this channel? Let me know down below. And subscribe. It takes around that much effort to do so. And until next time, you have been traumatized.